You have the floor, sir.
Halloween. Happy Halloween, all you fucking nerds. And since it's Halloween, we're going to discuss our favorites about horror games. And my job today is, John, I'm going to convince you that Gears of War is one of the best survival horror games of this generation. Specifically, one. We're only going with one. And, John, okay, hear me out, everybody. I would like to have a seat on the table. The way I see survival horror games is I do three things. One, I'm going into a world where I know little to nothing about it. So the first, Resident Evil. Random ass mansion. You don't know what the hell is going in this mansion. You just know that there's zombies in the woods. Gears of War. You are starting 10 years after the invasion of creepy ass fucking lizard people coming out of the planet. You don't know what the fuck locusts are when you first meet the fucking berserker for the first time. It's one of the most terrifying experiences in a fucking video game. That thing can't hear. That thing can't see. It smells you out. It is deaf and blind, and it will run you over and absolutely explode you in a matter of a second if you're not dumb. 2, little to no item management. Replaying Gears of War 1, they don't give you fucking ammo. They rarely give you ammo. You can run out in like a single fight if you're dumb. And trust me, I died like 5 times in this playthrough, and I've played this game 30 times. You can easily die, you can easily get blown up, stuff can come out of nowhere and chainsaw you in the back, and it's not fun. 3, Gears has some of the most scariest levels in both survival horror games and in shooters in general. I just mentioned the berserker fight. There's also a creepy mansion in the middle of Gears 1 as well, where shit literally Resident Evil style busts through doors to try and kill you. Also, there is there's like a silo, there's like a rundown like energy plant town in the first Gears as well, which is the color, which is terrible.
I'm trying to shake it up a little bit. I'm trying to rattle you a little bit.
And the one thing I will say about Gears 1
you look like a Jedi.
That trailer, the original Mad World trailer, you hear in that trailer is completely silent. The only sounds you hear are the background noises, which is Marcus's feet running against the cobblestone, the growling of Locust, and the shots at the end when he's firing at the corpser. Throughout that trailer, Mad World has shaken me to the core ever since I fucking heard that trailer when I was 9. Gears of War. Yeah, what Gears of War does is different than any other over-the-shoulder shooter. And another thing is, it was based off of Resident Evil 4. Gears of War would not exist if Resident Evil 4 did not exist. And what that game does, depicting a worn-down planet, species, a terrifying force that literally comes out of the ground. You get no warning to where it's coming from. Locust will literally come out of nowhere and use our weapons, use our own pieces of war against us. And you are never safe in Gears. You can play on easy. You can die in like 2 or 3 hits. You can get popped off by a single sniper. You can literally get ripped apart by, like I said, giant deaf and blind creatures. And what Gears of War does with its horror, with its music, with its like super gothic atmosphere, literally like 15 years later, Gears of War still scares the hell out of me. I will still jump. I will still literally like tense up while I'm doing any of the berserker thing. I joke that my like asshole clenches every time I do any of the berserker fights in Gears 1, because that thing's gonna move unpredictably and you will explode at least once. And the one thing I will say about what Gears of War does and why I call it a survival horror game, because to me, survival horror doesn't always mean crazy spooky town. So survival horror doesn't mean spooky mansion, spooky police station. To me, survival horror is the atmosphere of feeling like no matter how powerful you are, there is always something around that corner that can kill you. No matter what weaponry you have, no matter what, like, how strong you feel. And I mean, I'm not Marcus Phoenix, obviously, but like Marcus Phoenix can literally
You dress like him though.
I attempt, but all the characters in Gears are legitimately built like trucks, so you would think, oh, they're extremely powerful, they can do whatever they can. They're also not humans, by the way. Fun fact about Gears of War, none of those people are actually humans.
But I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, but so
Is that
the
some
fact
Gears of War 3 shit? Because I didn't.
no,
play 3
that's
or
like
4 or
first game
5.
lore. Blaine, I'll tell you later. It's a rabbit
We'll
hole.
play
I love
co-op.
how-
We'll play co-op.
I
Um,
love how out of it Blaine is at this point.
but just the fact that to me, survival horror doesn't mean all of those tropes. So, survival horror to me is you have to survive no matter what the cost, obviously. And I feel like Gears of War 1 especially has that in such strives, in such well-designed combat, well-designed enemies, well-designed story that's so incredibly bleak. Like, by the time Gears 1 starts, half the planet's wiped out. That's like over 1 billion people. And it's one of the most terrifying things, because when Gears 1 starts, you don't know who the locusts are. They literally come out of the ground. They've been doing it for 10 years. That's it. You were supposed to be scared of them, and what Gears does to make you scared of them is absolutely insane for like a mid-2000s over-the-shoulder cover shooter that literally popularized like slamming your back against cover and then vaulting over it.
I think I fundamentally agree with you on that. All the aspects are there.
I will take questions.
Yeah, I think I fundamentally agree with you that all those aspects are there, whether or not they're as successful, such as the ammo given and the tonal differences between the action and the survival aspect. But I think that world, especially with how it's posited in Gears 1, it is fucking ripe for a straight up actual survival horror game to be taking place where you're not armed to the teeth. And that's not to say that you can't be armed to the teeth in a survival horror game. You can still be fucking scared as shit during Resident Evil 4. But John,
honestly,
what do you think?
Being armed to the teeth in Gears, yeah, can make you think, oh, well, this isn't a horror game. But once you see the locust using your own weapon against you midway through the game, nothing is more terrifying than a locust literally walking towards you with a Nasher shotgun aiming directly at your head. When you're like, they can't do that. That's my thing. No, it's not your thing, fucker. It is also theirs.
I will say, as much as something in me doesn't want to really call it survival horror. I don't know if that's just personal bias or whatever.
I would say horror aspects.
Well, no, that's where I was going with this. Was that I will say, because I played only Gears 1 and Gears 2. And I remember there were a lot of Gears 2. There was one level in specific when you first fight the Lambents, the bioluminescent locusts.
That
was a straight up survival horror level. I'll say that right now. Even if I disagree with your saying that it is in general a survival horror game, that level was heavily inspired by survival horror aesthetics and survival horror design elements.
Just the pacing is like super. It's on
like a haunted house almost.
Yeah.
Or like a Doom 2 or Doom 3. Like just like you're gonna turn a corner and a monster's gonna pop out at you. I will say, while even if I don't know if I'm sorry, I have to say this. John's green light is just making me think of Dino Crisis. I don't know if it's because I'm drunk or because
no, you called him. Jaw will appear.
I'll bother you, but to bother Jaw later.
Okay.
But like, no, seriously though. Like, there's definitely been horror elements. I am almost compelled to say something like a John Carpenter circa mid-80s to mid-90s approach to like incorporating different elements of different genres, but still relying on one main genre.
Oh, you know what? We totally didn't even mention the krill, which are absent from the entirety of the rest of the series, where
which makes being in the dark terrifying, because they will literally rip you up in seconds, no matter what difficulty.
Remind me what the fuck the krill are.
There's these spooky bat things that if you go in the dark, they give you really bad ouchies and kill you.
Like rip you apart, like explode you into like. They're only in one.
Okay, because they both had the iron rain, the blade rain or whatever the fuck it was, right? Like where if it rained.
That was
the
only
last
2.
rain wasn't 3.
That wasn't 3?
I thought that was 2.
I think it was in both of them. But yeah.
Okay, well, I just know there was
glass
one
rain is terrifying.
When it rains on that planet,
it rains glass on that planet.
And it kills you.
This was before all the locusts, too. Like,
it's a fucked up planet.
John, you look so evil. I love it.
John, what are your thoughts so far?
Judge me, John. Let's go. I'm prepared to hear it.
You have been greenlit. I don't apologize for that. Oh, is John alive? Did we lose John? Is he thinking? He's not doing his hand
Thinking.
gestures like before. John, make a slight head movement.
Did John get a contact drunk?
I think he.
How that's possible?
There he is.
Oh, that's okay. That kind of spooks me a bit. It came out of nowhere.
I disagree.
Okay.
Damn, fucking wrecked your argument right there.
Okay. People don't have to agree. That's why I like survival horror as a genre, because everyone has their own interpretations to what it is. And I could say Gears of War is one of the best survival horror games of this generation, and you could say no, and that's totally fine.
So here's my thing.
Oh, just to cut in, I was being totally facetious with a John thing, just making fun of some asshat that came at me earlier.
No, it's all right. So I judge whether or not something look, I'm not going to sit here and say that Sarah is wrong. I don't want to. I'm not going to do that. What I will say is,
because you fear me, John. Just
as all people should.
I can assure you that I fear no one on this podcast. Except Sarah.
I am no
one.
So
I am tiny. Fear me.
I've played the first Gears of War, and at no time did I actually feel in danger, simply because it was too, it was a big, it's big dudes built like a truck, big sweaty dudes blowing up space aliens. Everything is loud and in your face, and there's chainsaws that you're using to saw aliens in half, and you got Marcus Phoenix, Coltrane, even Marcus's dad. Even Marcus's dad is built like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I'm like, I'm like, why is this old scientist built like fucking Colossus from the X-Men?
In the first game?
And so like I never felt afraid. I never felt scared. Like I was just like, yeah, killing aliens. So I personally would not consider it a horror game by any stretch of the imagination. But having said that, I'm also not going to sit here and say that Sarah is wrong to say or to think that it is. I will fundamentally disagree on how I personally categorize it, if that makes any sense.
No, and I feel like Gears of War is one of those games where, I'm going to sound crazy here saying that Gears of War has intense lore, but oh my god, Gears of War has intense lore to it. And I feel like, of course, this is, again, different for everybody, but to me, knowing the background of the game, knowing the lore of everything going on in the first game definitely helps you with the horror aspect to it. Because like Blaine just figured out, you're not on Earth. Those aren't people. They're built that big because that's how their species is built. So you could be like the biggest man in existence. You could be Marcus Phoenix, and you will literally die in this war within like the next 5
I was
minutes.
Gonna say,
and it's one of those games where like no one is safe, and especially in this series, especially in 5, especially in 3, when I guess, spoiler, for like 10 years they killed Dom in one of the most depressing scenes in existence.
He didn't kill his tomatoes, though.
I know his wife died.
The tomatoes live.
God, get the tomatoes out of here. It's one of those games to where I truly feel that no one's safe, and to me, that's a horror element that I think Gears handles in such a well-done way, because this is, like, obviously, this is science fiction war, and, like, there are literal lizard people coming out of the ground, like, it's one of those things where this is science fiction to the nth degree, but I think it's handled in a way where it's terrifying. You don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know who's going to die next. You are going into this unknown space that looks like Earth, but it's not, and these locusts who... you don't know if they're the villains or not, especially after Gears 2 and 3. It's one of these things where it throws so many different types of horror elements at you, and I would honestly compare it to a more Aliens, like Aliens as an Alien 2 than anything else. It's not, there are some spaces that aren't scary. There are some areas that are bright lit, that are like, when you meet Baird and Cole for the first time, that aren't exactly spooky, but when it gets to the night aspect, and you get to the spooky haunted house, when you get to the energy plant, when you get to those places, I think Gears truly has its survival horror roots in those areas, and especially the fact that it takes so much from Resident Evil 4, and what Gears 4 did as well, which takes stuff from Gears 1, which Gears 4 is utterly terrifying because you're playing as characters who don't know who the Locusts are, who don't know what this is, and just learning with them is some of the most like scariest experiences that I've had. Like, oh my god, what is that? Why is it following us? Oh, this looks like something that Dad brought up like 10 years ago. It's just this, the world that Gears of War inhabits is some of the bleakest, darkest stories that I've ever seen like a shooter kind of bring to light, and the way that they handle it in such a horror inspired survival horror way is why Gears is one of my favorite survival horror games. And it's, I won't exactly say the Ultimate Edition, because yeah, the Ultimate Edition can be creepy. I'd say more the first one, like back in like 2005. First one, just mostly because it's got that grittiness to it, it's got that griminess to it, it's got that horror elements to it. And also, like, again, like that Mad World trailer, it just hits me in a way where I look at Gears so differently because of it. I've never, as a kid, I'd never seen a series so bleak. I've never seen a series so just dark and like, oh, like what are these like glowing-eyed aliens? They're literally in this space that looks like Earth and everything's destroyed. And that hit me as a kid like so intensely that when I first played it, it scared me, and it still scares me when I'm like 24. Like I still jump. So I'm just like, what the hell? Like it's one of those series where everyone's going to look at it differently, but I look at it from a survival horror lens. I look at it from that horror spot that I put it in. And if you don't agree with me, I totally understand. Trust me, people look at me funky when I say Gears has some of my favorite lore in gaming ever, because they don't even know the background to everything. And they don't even know what this game is like hiding under its like bleak atmosphere.
I would say that I think, even though I still fundamentally for your opinion that it is a survival horror game, I would argue that horror is inseparable from what makes Gears what it is. And to add to the comparison to Resident Evil 4, as you said, one would not ever exist without the other. I would say that if anything, it feels more like horror action than survival horror, but then we're just nitpicking at that point because it is built so much on that fear of the other. And I'm going to bring up that John Carpenter comparison again because it makes me think of like that borderline ham-fisted, but in a good way, attempt at like getting shit across to you and getting it to you to experience it through the main character.